everyone. Welcome to a uh, special treat we have today. Today is the last day of our Ayami season. So it is a wonderful chance to have everyone come together during this joyous time. Um, we have a wonderful speaker today, but before we get to him, we are going to have some devotions. So let me share my screen for some devotions. Let's see, share screen. Here we go. All right. So here's my screen. All right. So we have a number of writings. I think we have about a dozen. I will let people unmute themselves and read as their heart moves. It starts and ends with a song. So here we go.
O ye true believers in God, the Lord, peerless is He, hath made woman and man to abide with each other in the closest companionship, and to be even as a single soul. They are two helpmates, two intimate friends. They are two helpmates, two intimate friends, who should be concerned about the welfare of each other. If they live thus, they will pass through this world with perfect contentment and bliss and peace of heart, and become the object of divine grace, of divine grace, and favor in the kingdom of heaven. Strive then to abide heart and soul with each other as two doves in the nest. For this is to be blessed in both worlds. For this is to be blessed in both worlds. In both worlds. In both worlds.
O divine providence, this assemblage is composed of thy friends who are attracted to thy beauty and are set ablaze by the fire of thy love. Turn these souls into heavenly angels, resuscitate them through the breath of thy Holy Spirit. Grant them eloquent tongues and resolute hearts. Bestow upon them heavenly power and merciful susceptibilities. Cause them to become the promulgators of the oneness of mankind and the cause of love and concord in the world of humanity, so that the perilous darkness of ignorant prejudice may vanish through the light of the Son of Truth. This dreary world may become illumined. This material realm may absorb the rays of the world of spirit. These different colors may merge into one color, and the melody of praise may rise of thy sanctity. Verily, thou art the omnipotent and the almighty. Abdul Baha.
The prophets of God should be regarded as physicians whose task is to foster the well-being of the world and its peoples, that the prophets of God should be regarded as physicians whose task is to foster the well-being of the world and its peoples, that through the spirit of oneness they may heal the sickness of a divided humanity.
I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be as one, as we are one. I in them, and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. From the book of John, 17:22 to 23.
The man who sees me in everything and everything within me will not be lost to me, nor will I ever be lost to him. He who is rooted in oneness realizes that I am in every being wherever he goes. He remains in me. When he sees all being as equal in suffering or in joy because they are like himself, that man has grown perfect in yoga.
All beings tremble before violence, all fear death, all love life. See yourself and others. Them whom can you hurt? What harm can you do? He who seeks happiness by hurting those who seek happiness will never find happiness. For your brother and sister are like you. They want to be happy. Never harm them. And when you leave this life, you too will find happiness. Buddhism, the Buddha.
You can develop the right attitude toward others if you have kindness, love, and respect for them, and a clear realization of the oneness of all human beings.
In every dispensation, the light of divine guidance has been focused upon one central theme. In this wondrous revelation, this glorious century, the foundation of the faith of God and the distinguishing feature of his law is the consciousness of the oneness of mankind.
A fundamental teaching of Baha'u'llah is the oneness of the world of humanity. Addressing mankind, he says, "Ye are all leaves of one tree and the fruits of one branch." In this way, Baha'u'llah expressed the oneness of humankind. Whereas in all religious teachings of the past, the human world has been represented as divided into two parts, one known as the people of the book, or the pure tree, and the other people of infidelity and error, or the evil tree. The former were considered as belonging to the faithful, and the others to the host of irreligious and infidel. One part of humanity, the recipients of divine mercy, and the other, object of wrath of their Creator. His Holiness Baha'u'llah removed this by proclaiming the oneness of the world of humanity.
The universe is ever changing, and everything is interrelated as one. Once we realize the oneness, there will be nothing we do not know. But if we do not realize the oneness, there will be nothing that we truly know. Taoism.
Cleanse your eyes, so that ye behold no man as different from yourselves. See ye no strangers, rather see all men as friends. For love and unity come hard when ye fix your gaze on otherness. And in this new and wondrous age, the holy writings say that we must be at one with every people. For each of the creatures is a sign of God, and it was by the grace of the Lord and his power that each did step into the world. Therefore, they are not strangers, but in the family, not aliens, but friends, and to be treated as such.
The one who loves all intensely begins perceiving in all living beings a part of himself. He becomes a lover of all, a part and parcel of the universal joy. He flows with the stream of happiness and is enriched by each soul. Hindus.
I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you may perfectly be united in mind and thought.
It is he who hath produced you from a single soul. Here is a place of sojourn and a place of departure. Islam, Quran 698.
Ngintabi tudu ingan otopakku ampun leh dosa-dosa koi masih tuduh koi biar odak leh koi dapat nuna Naiko I oda joke sinonga Tudu ingan Masing ibona ko itu duoni Desuka ingan duo De oda ingan pakat le o dope de muti demo bona bona bisa ya Bia masih ngapun bala de muti pakapi ngapun ingan lede jadin pinulung dang pinusa depingi di ingan lede jadin pinulung dang pinusa depingi di
Okay, thank you. That ends the prepared portion of the devotion. So now we'd like to open it up to anyone who would like to share a prayer. So if you would like to share a prayer, please unmute yourself and share right now.
O my God, O my God, verily these servants are turning to thee, supplicating thy kingdom of mercy. Verily they are attracted by thy holiness and set aglow with the fire of thy love, seeking confirmation from thy wondrous kingdom, and hoping for attainment in thy heavenly realm. Verily they long for the descent of thy bestowal, desiring illumination from the sun of reality. O Lord, make them radiant lamps, merciful signs, fruitful trees, and shining stars. May they come forth in thy service and be connected with thee by the bonds and ties of thy love, longing for the lights of thy favor. O Lord, make them signs of guidance, standards of thine immortal kingdom, waves of the sea of thy mercy, mirrors of the light of thy majesty. Verily thou art the generous, verily thou art the merciful, verily thou art the precious, the beloved.
All praise, O my God, be to thee, who art the source of all glory and majesty, of greatness and honor, of sovereignty and dominion, of loftiness and grace, of awe and power. Whomever thou willest, thou causest to draw nigh unto thy most great ocean, and whomsoever thou desirest, thou conferrest the honor of recognizing thy most ancient name. Of all who are in heaven and on earth, none can withstand the operation of thy sovereign will. From all eternity thou didst rule the entire creation, and thou wilt continue forevermore to exercise thy dominion over all created things. There is none other God but thee, the Almighty, the Exalted, the All-Powerful, the All-Wise. Illumine, O Lord, the faces of thy servants, that they may behold thee, and cleanse their hearts, that they may turn unto the court of thy heavenly favors, and recognize him who is the manifestation of thyself, and the dayspring of thine essence. Verily thou art the Lord of all worlds. There is no God but thee, the unconstrained, the all-subduing.
Is there anyone else who would like to share a prayer before we start our fireside chat? All right. Well, then, I am going to turn it over to my dear brother Nabil, who will introduce our speaker today.
All right. Well, friends, welcome, aloha, and welcome to our Sunday morning fireside. So there are some things that I wanted to, in order to, properly introduce Mr. Jamshid Ardjomandi to you today. I had to clear a lot of things with him. There's not much that he wanted me to tell you. And so he doesn't want too much fuss made about his service. And so that's the official introduction that I will do shortly. But first, I'm going to give a personal note. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to my current community a man who is a rock and a pillar of my first Baha'i community. And that's in Suriname, South America. More than that, on a very personal note, his family is inextricably bound to ours, in the sense that when my parents arrived in Suriname in 1977 with a 4- and a 2-year-old, the Ardjomandis took us into their home for several months while my parents were getting established. My very first memories are of me and my older brother playing with their sons, Khodadat and Ruhi, who are brothers to us. Throughout our years growing up, the home of the Ardjomandis was a second home for us. Just about every adult in our Baha'i community in Suriname was called an uncle or an aunt to us kids. In Dutch, it's Oom and Tante. But Oom Jamshid and Tante Soeki were like our alternate parents. When we had problems in our family, we turned to theirs for advice. So it's always weird when you realize as an adult the magnitude of the things that your parents did. My Oom Jamshid is a geologist by training. But he worked many years in a shoe factory. Suriname is a very small country, the population less than Austin. Most of the time while I was growing up, he was a member of our National Spiritual Assembly. He's not going to want me to tell you those things. He not only traveled in the interior of the country, where many Baha'is live in villages. He is one of the few people that I know from the city, Baha'i or not Baha'i, who actually took the time to learn to speak the tribe's language, which is called Saramakan. So these are things that just seemed normal to me as a kid. But his and his family service is extraordinary to me now that I'm older and reflecting on this. Anyway, more recently, he has traveled places, by invitation to speak to Baha'i communities and friends in India, Europe, Brazil, and he shared, among other things, this presentation that you're about to hear over the next 3 Sundays. So now, with my apologies to Oom Jamshid for going on the personal note, I would like to read you the more official intro. Jamshid Ardjomandi and his wife Soeki served at the Baha'i World Center from 1997 until 2013 in various roles, including custodian of the Mansion of Baha'u'llah. Jamshid has also served as coordinator of Office of Holy Places and as a pilgrim guide. He pioneered in Suriname since 1970, where he met and married Soeki, and they have 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. Prior to Suriname, he had also pioneered in Northern Ireland for 10 years, but he hails from the city of Yazd in Iran. And so, without further ado, Mr. Jamshid Ardjomandi, thank you for being here.
love of friends, and our dear son Nabil embarrasses me quite often with his kind words of his, and all that he said, the part that they were our children, and Hushang and Akhtar are like brothers and sisters. And when you serve the cause of God together, you form a bond that, at least as long as we are faithful to the cause of God, we hope it is eternal. And that is what I pray and hope for, that I will have that eternal bond with Hushang and Akhtar and their children and grandchildren, all of them. Now, dear friends, I want to to say that what we are going to do is not really look at some pictures and listen to stories. I'm hoping, really, that you will take a trip with me to these holy places. And the greatest holy leaf tells us that we need to study the sufferings of the Blessed Beauty, to know what he went through for our sake and for the sake of humanity in general, because that causes our hearts to become tender and brings us together more than anything else. And so, dear friend, really a great part of today, and maybe even the next session, is going to be about the sufferings of the Blessed Beauty. And not really so much the parts before he actually was exiled to Akka, because that's another part of the history which we hope sometimes in the future someone will refer to. But since I have had the privilege of spending so long in the World Center, and having been a pilgrim guide, and I've taken thousands of pilgrims to these holy places, and had to learn about them and what made them what they are, to share that with you from the time of Baha'u'llah and his family and many of his followers into the city of Akka. And I thought that to do that, the best thing is to see some of the old photographs of the place, how it was and how it has become, and what do we see as pilgrims when we go there now. I should add, of course, that here is also my very dear friend and colleague and fellow servant of Baha'u'llah at the World Center, Arasul Usku. We spent time together at the World Center. Different offices, of course, but we both served at the same time, and we shared a lot of beautiful meetings where we listened to house members and in fact, some of the hands of the cause who were still alive, and members of International Teaching Center and so on. And I am so happy to meet him again today. So, dear friends, let's, without further ado, go to Akka, because that's where we are going to start our journey. I'm going to try to share the screen. I did it before we started and it worked, and I really hope that it works again. I'm never sure. I'm very illiterate in this kind of technical aspects of life, but okay, we will try. Here we go. Share screen. This is the one I want. So, beloved friends, this is called the Covenant and Holy Places because, the wonderful thing about the covenant, we live in the covenant. We are upheld by the power of the covenant. Without the power of the covenant, we would really all perish and disappear in thin air. And so I thought, okay, it would be wonderful just to see how and in which of the holy places the covenant of Allah was established with us, and where and when. And I'm not so good with dates, so you will have to forgive me for that. But it is more to connect the holy place with the covenant, and of course to see the holy place for what they are and for what they were at that time. Now, you know that in the old scriptures from time immemorial, from the first messenger of God that came to humanity up till Muhammad, the last prophet, they all promised that the promised one of all ages will come to this particular city in the east, and they all referred to it, and they called it by various names, and they described it in various ways, and they represented it in all the manners of their scripture that they could think of. And really, it came down to Muhammad when he actually mentioned the name of the city, and he calls it Akka. And it is this city to which Baha'u'llah was promised that he would come. And in their old scriptures, they go so far as to tell us how he's going to come. And they mention he's going to come by way of the sea, the old prophets. He's going to enter the city through the gate that looketh to the east. And the King David talks about open, O gate, open thou the door, and the King of glory shall come in. And then they ask, who is the King of glory? And he says, the Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. And that he will enter the city through the gate that looketh to the east. And dear friends, now we are going to go, and I'm going to try. Now, what happens is that when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople, he was already busy revealing tablets to the kings and rulers, and the two presumptuous governments of the time, the Shah of Persia and the Sultan of Turkey, they decided that they wanted Baha'u'llah further away from their kingdoms and their places where they ruled, and they decided to send him to Akka. You know, and Abdul Baha says, not knowing what they were doing, they exiled the blessed beauty to this most terrible place on earth, not knowing that they were fulfilling the promise that God had made to humanity. So, dear friends, when they put Baha'u'llah on a ship in Gallipoli and headed for the city of Haifa, they really didn't know that they were fulfilling God's prophecy. But that's what it was. And when he arrived in the city of Haifa in a big steamship, they had to be transferred into a small sailing ship, which was much too small for the number of passengers, and the Greatest Holy Leaf talks about it. She has written about it, that it was a sailing ship not big enough for the number of passengers and cargo that they had put in it. And as it headed towards Akka, because there was no wind, it sat in the middle of the Mediterranean in the heat and the sun of the 31st of August. It wasn't moving. It took 8 hours for this small vessel to reach this place, which really to arrive at this point. And when it got here, the tide was out. So this little ship could not come close enough to this gate. Now, the city of Akka had 2 possibilities to enter and exit. One was called the sea gate, which is this, and the other one is the land gate, which you'll see at another time. Now, the sea gate is what the prophets of old had prophesied, that the Lord of hosts will come by way of the sea, which he did, and would enter enter the city through a gate that looketh to the east. Now, those of you who have lived in Akka or have had the good fortune to be in Akka before the sun rises, and you come to this place, which I will show you now, it is possible actually to walk and come to this place, and you have come to this place, as soon as the sun rises, it falls on this gate. So, dear friends, this is the gate that looketh to the east, and the King of Glory came in to this gate, into the city of Akka. But the city of Akka was the most awful place, the worst place on earth. Baha'u'llah called it the worst city on earth, foul of water and air. He calls it the metropolis of the owl, where naught but the hooting of that bird could be heard the whole day. So, dear friend, knowing where the owl makes its nest, then we can imagine that this was a complete ruined city. Owls lived in it. And it had no water, and the air was so foul that they say if a bird flew over the city of Akka, would drop dead. Baha'u'llah says the situation was so terrible that he says, on arrival, not a day later, on arrival, we chose to call this place the most great prison. And then he goes on to say, even though at another time we were in chains and fetters, referring to the Sialchar, he says, nevertheless, we refuse to call it by that name. Contemplate, O people of understanding. So Baha'u'llah wants us to think about why he called this city and this place the most great prison. And as we go on, it will become clearer to us as we see what happened to the members of the family of Baha'u'llah and to the followers of Baha'u'llah and to the person of Baha'u'llah and the attitude of the people of the time. Then we realize why he called it the most great prison. Now, dear friends, this place, this is the entrance, and you know, but this is very, very important to realize that when long before Baha'u'llah was exiled to this city, he had revealed the tablet in which he mentions his next point of exile will be the city of Akka. But he says, on arrival, we will receive with the banners of light. And the voice of the Spirit cried out, soon will all that dwell on earth be gathered under these banners. And dear friends, he repeats that on arrival at this gate as he entered the city of Akka. Okay, the other members of the family and the followers didn't notice that, but he was the promised one. He was the King of glory. He was the Lord of hosts. He was welcomed into the promised land. And so the banners of light welcomed him into the city, and the voice of the Spirit cried out, soon will all that dwell on earth be gathered under these banners. And so he was welcomed into the city like a King of kings. Shogi tells us that on that particular day, all the people of Akka had been called to come to this place to witness the arrival of the king of the Persians. And he goes on to say that the narrow, tortuous lanes of Akka was full of, on all sides, was full of curious and callous people of Akka. This is the way the beloved Guardian refers to the people of those days. They were so terrible. And the greatest Holy League tells us they were jeering and they were shouting and they were making their arrival so difficult. And they were carrying out in such a monstrous way that Baha'u'llah gave them the title of the generation of vipers. That is the people of those days in Akka. So, dear friends, you can gradually begin to understand what was going on. And so, from here, in the heat of the day, then another thing is that during the whole journey from Haifa to this place, the greatest Holy Leaf tells us that they had no place to hide from the sun. They were sitting in the middle of the sea with nowhere to hide from that burning sun of the 31st of August. And during the whole journey, they were given neither food nor anything to drink. Can you imagine? We cannot sit 2 minutes without drinking something, or we cannot walk 5 minutes in the sun without carrying our water bottles and drinking from it. And Baha'u'llah and his family and the companions sat in the middle of the sea for more than 8 hours, and they arrived here hungry, but more thirsty and hot than anything else. And then the streets of Akka were surrounded by these terrible people. The heat and the stench-filled air of Akka was overpowering. The greatest Holy Leaf tells us a little bit later, she will tell us something more. I want to show you the actual gate. This is the gate through which Baha'u'llah entered the city. And this is part of the original gate, which still was hanging when we took this picture. I don't know after all these years whether this thing is still hanging there or not now, but then it was. So through this gate, Baha'u'llah entered the city of Akka. And and now this is the gate. And as I was telling you, you can come walk here to the front of this gate and see how it looks for yourself. Now, there's a lot of details that I have to leave out because I only have 1 hour to tell you about these incredible things that happened here. But still, you will know enough to understand what we are talking about. Now, this is a drawing of the old city of Akka, which shows the aqueduct, the mosques, and this mosque, which was the major mosque of the city, known as the Mosque of Yazd, which we will see a little bit later. And here it is, that mosque. It is in front of that mosque that Baha'u'llah had to pass. And it is inside this mosque where the edict of the Sultan of Turkey was read, forbidding the people of Akka to have any kind of association with Baha'u'llah and his companions and his family members. And that he was sent here as a prisoner perpetual for life. Dear friends, this is the old picture of the prison, which was really an army barracks. After walking for 2 or 3 kilometers in this heat and with the crowd pushing on all sides, and remember, the women were covered in their black costume. That was a traditional dress for those days for the women. And so you can imagine how they felt when they arrived at this point, and they still had to climb these stairs to go into this gate into this army camp. That place looks like this today. So, and this door is now locked. So the pilgrims don't use it, and they come from the back, from towards the sea. They come and they enter the prison, and they come into this prison. And this, beloved friends, is how it looked at the time of the arrival of Baha'u'llah. And that this thing in the middle is a pool. Is a pool in which there was water, but what kind of a water? You didn't dare put your hand in it. It was filthy, it was stagnant, it was smelly, and they used to soak wheat in this water to make mat. The greatest Holy Leaf tells us that when they arrived in this place and saw the condition of the place and the smell of the place and the heat and the horror of the situation, and they realized that this is where they had to live, the greatest Holy Leaf tells us she passed away. She passed out, sorry. She passed out and fell down here. They begged for some clean water to sprinkle on the face of the greatest holy leaf and bring her around. It was not given to them. They were refused water to sprinkle on the face of the greatest holy leaf. So you can imagine, here is that beloved lady passed out. There stands Baha'u'llah, Asiya Khanum, the beloved mother, Abdul, the Purest Branch, and Mirza Musa, and all the other members of the family looking on, not knowing what to do, how to help. Can you put yourself in that situation and see how you would feel? And eventually, they were all pushed into this room, in this corner. That room wasn't big enough for all the more than 70 people. Over 70 men, women, and children were pushed into this room. The floor was covered with filth. No place to sit, no place to sleep. And when everybody was in the room, the Baha'u'llah writes about it. And he says, the first night, they were refused food and water. He says they begged, these are the words of Allah, they begged for water and it was refused. Can you imagine, friends? The whole day, no water, no food. And then when the food that was given to them was 2 pieces of very poor quality bread that they couldn't even eat. And they were too thirsty to eat that bread anyway. Baha'u'llah goes on to say, 2 youths, 2 brothers, locked in each other's arms, ascended. Then he revealed it in their honor, in which he says, never before did 2 brothers enter our kingdom in such unity. And the next day when they wanted to take them and bury them, they wouldn't allow the friends to do that. The guards had to do that. And for the guards to do that, they had to be paid them. They had no money. Abdul Baha had no money. Baha'u'llah had no money. They were prisoners. The only thing that they had that could be sold was a little piece of rock that Baha'u'llah used to sit on. And they sold that and they gave the guard the money and hoping that they would give the brothers a decent burial. Later on, they discovered they dug a shallow hole and they put the brothers in their clothes without washing them, without preparing them, without giving them a decent burial, even though the money was much more than what was necessary for that. So you can see, friends, every step that they are taking, these Baha'u'llah and his beloved family and companion, brings us a little closer to the understanding of why is this the most great prison. This is what we see today. When you go on pilgrimage, dear friends, you go up these stairs and you come upstairs, because this was the room in which these Baha'u'llah and his family and companions were imprisoned for a few days. And then they moved them up to the upper floor, which was a better, at least they could get a little bit of fresh air. But these stairs were not there. These were built during the time of the British in the 40s. Baha'u'llah arrived in the city of Akka in 1868. 31st of August 1868 is the date of arrival of Baha'u'llah into the prison city. These things didn't exist. These were not as clean and as lovely as they look today. This is now a museum and the government keeps it like that. But for Baha'u'llah to go upstairs, he had to pass through this tunnel-like place and then go to the right here and then come up the stairs. But these are, these were all like a dumping ground for all the filth. And that is how it was in those days, not the way we look and we see today. But, I have to move on. And, dear friends, there's so much to know and to share. I hope you can go and study them for yourself afterward. But before I take you into the actual prison rooms, then I want to show you where the early pilgrims used to stand. Now we can go into the prison and go into the room of Baha'u'llah and to sit there and to meditate and pray, remember his suffering. But the early believers, first of all, they didn't know what had happened to Baha'u'llah. And when eventually Abdul Baha'u'llah was able to get the message out into the Baha'i world to say Baha'u'llah was in prison in Akka, then the friends started to come on pilgrimage, walking all the way. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, they were on their way. And when they arrived and they came to the city of Akka, hoping that they could attain the presence of their beloved, they were refused entry into the prison, into the city, let alone into the prison. So they used to go outside the city and stand on the edge of the outer moat, because the city of Akka was surrounded by moats to prevent people going into the city, unless they were going through the 2 gates of the sea gate and the land. And then they would come and stand here. This was desert. I just took that picture with the car so I can say where the car is standing. That wasn't there. That was just desert all the way to Lebanon in the north. And then they would come and stand and look at this building, not knowing where Baha'u'llah was. They were hoping that somehow they could see him. They could see a sign of his presence. Baha'u'llah was in a room there. He couldn't see people standing here. But the members of the family were in these 2 rooms, this one and this one. Not any of the other ones. You see, they were here in these 2 rooms. They could see people standing here in the sun, in the rain, in whatever, the cold, and they knew they were pilgrims. Nobody else stands in the middle of a desert, in the middle of the sun. And so they would go to the room of Baha'u'llah, inform him that there are pilgrims standing outside. He would come to one of these windows to wave at them. And the pilgrims would hope to see the hand of their beloved through the bars of the prison. And those who had poor eyesight, they would stand there and strain their eyes for hours and for the whole day without being able to see his hand even. But still, they were satisfied because they were so close to him, so near to him. And they were happy that their fellow pilgrims could tell them about the movements of the hand of their beloved. I want to show you how far really it is, because you can't get an impression of how far it is and why they couldn't. So I'm going to take you inside. You see, now we are in the prison, in one of those rooms where the family used to stay. So we are behind the bars, and look, friends, this, where that red pointer is, that is where the pilgrims were standing. So you can see how far away it was from where Baha'u'llah was waving at them. But still, they were happy. And they would leave and go back to their own countries, giving the glad tidings that they had seen the hand of the blessed future. These are the windows of the room of Baha'u'llah. And when you go on pilgrimage, I hope that you will stand and look out of the window, and then you can see what Baha'u'llah could see is nothing but old houses and a piece of the mold and a bit of the sea. And for 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days, he was living in this room. The room was so terrible. The room was so terrible that he has written about it. And he says, the room in which I was to stay was not suitable for human habitation. And the little plaster which was on the wall kept falling on me. Can you place yourself in the situation, friend, and be in the room? In the winter, this room is so monstrously cold that you cannot stand barefoot on this stone because it is like standing on a block of ice. The wall is so damp, it is more than damp, it is wet. You put your hand on the wall, but if you're a pilgrim in the winter time, and you would feel the wetness of the wall. And Baha'u'llah had to live in this place for 2 years, 2 months, and 5. And here, when he was sitting, he was revealing tablets. The work of God was continuing. He couldn't stop and say, "Oh no, my room is not comfortable. I cannot do it." In the summer, it is so hot. You stay in this room is like staying in a room full of steam. It's like in a bath, in a Turkish bath full of steam. It is so hot and humid that you cannot stand more than a few minutes really in there. And Baha'u'llah lived in it for 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days. He tells us in a tablet to the Christians, we have come and accepted the suffering for your salvation. He accepted all of that for the sake of humanity, for the salvation of humanity. And it is in this room, under this condition, that Baha'u'llah continued revealing the tablets to the kings and rulers of the earth, a work that he had begun in Adrianople and was interrupted by the government to exile him to this place, and then he had to continue here. And I want really you to think about how it had to be done. Where did they get the material, the paper, the ink, the reed pen, and all that was necessary? From where came the messengers? How did they attain the presence of Baha'u'llah when they were not allowed to come into his presence? And all these incredible things that these tablets were revealed to the Shah of Persia, to the Sultan of Turkey, to the Tsar Alexander of Russia, to the Queen Victoria of England, to the Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, to the presidents of the United States, and more, to all the rulers. And one of them was collectively to the kings and rulers of the world, all came from this room. And he says they were all sent out and they all received it, except the one of the Tsar of Russia, which they were sent later, and the one for Napoleon. And you know, the House of Justice referred to these tablets in one of the messages that had these kings and rulers accepted what was in tablets, the situation of the world would be different. But they didn't. They put the tablets aside. They disregarded it. In fact, Napoleon was so presumptuous as to say, if he is one God, I am two gods. And that's when Baha'u'llah sent him the second tablet, and within no time, his whole kingdom was turned upside down and he was ruined for good. They were deaf to the call of God, all of them. Queen Victoria responded in a polite way. But for the rest, and it is interesting to study, we can read them in the Summons of the Lord of Hosts, we can read these tablets in the Proclamation of Baha'u'llah. There are books that have been printed with all these tablets in it, so we can see what Baha'u'llah told those rulers at that time. And how did he get the messengers to take these? I can only refer to one of the names because there's no time really to go into details of all of that. That one that came to the presence of Baha'u'llah and he was transformed into a new being and got a new name was Agha Buzurg Khorasani, who is known as Badi to us. And Badi, when he heard that the tablet had to be taken to the Shah of Persia, begged Baha'u'llah to be allowed to do that. And he was given the privilege of taking the tablet, and he took it to the Shah, handed it to the Shah, and he was put in chains and tortured for 3 days and 3 nights, and then martyred in a most awful manner. And when that happened, Baha'u'llah gave him the title of the pride of the martyrs, Fakhr al-Shuhada. He called him the salt of my tablets. And in many of his tablets, he refers to him. And in one particular tablet, he refers to him and he says, ever since the way Badi acted, we have asked that you should convey the message with wisdom and tact. So, dear friends, you can see. And then all the other wonderful tablets, one by one, they were sent out and they reached their destination. And you know, when you go into this prison cell now, it's not like this. It has been repaired, it has been restored, but it is very, very remarkable that when this place we wanted to repair and make, you know, and do what had to be done, we asked if we could make the place look like this. Or we asked the House of Justice, and the House of Justice said no. Do the best. And so the prison was beautifully plastered, and everything was done as we found it to be in photographs of old and so on. But it is interesting that the House says, and leave it to time. The time is now returning the prison into the way it was. The plaster is falling off the wall everywhere. It's incredible. My dear wife Soeki and I were very privileged for more than 4 years to be custodians of the prison. And we used to come to clean and to prepare it for the pilgrims. And I can tell you from experience, dear friends, that in the winter it is so awfully cold. And in the summer it is terribly, terribly hot in this cell of Baha'u'llah. It is near the sea. It's being bombarded all the time with the sea air and the mist, and the walls are soaking wet in the wintertime. The beloved guardian repaired the room. So these are the 2 windows that you saw from outside, and it looks to the sea. But the beloved guardian put this mat here and the chairs for the use of the pilgrim because it is so cold in the winter. And the beloved House of Justice now has made it into a mat and carpet. So there are mats and the carpet, so we can, as pilgrims, we can sit and we can meditate for a few minutes. And the rest of the place was repaired by the government because it's a museum, and their freedom fighters were also imprisoned in this place, and so it's very important to them. And it's very interesting that this is the only room to which they have no access, because the vision of Shoghi in the 1930s, he requested to have the key to this room because it was the cell of Baha'u'llah. And he acquired this key to this prison cell, and it has remained a possession of the faith, and today is in the hand of the faith. And when the pilgrims come, we open this door, and they go in for a visit. And then after that, it's Islam. And then you can see, here is a sign that says this is the prison cell of Baha'u'llah in 3 languages, Hebrew, Arabic, and English, and Persian, as it were. And here is a plaque that says for how long, from which date to which date he stayed in this place. Just this is the room of Baha'u'llah. And these rooms were occupied by the other members of the family and companions. And this is what the government has done. This is not how it looked. But you know, during the time of Baha'u'llah's stay in this prison, Baha'u'llah suffered something beyond description. It's not possible to describe. And I will not even attempt. And I hope that you will go and study it and find out for yourself. Then he says he accepted the humiliation and all the suffering for our sake, so that we could be made free, enjoy the freedom. And then added to all of that was the martyrdom of the Purest Branch. Dear friends, I have really little time to go into details, but let me just still in summary tell you that Mirza Mehdi, the Purest Branch, was only 2 years old when Baha'u'llah was put in the Sea of Chalk. And so we can say really the sufferings of this young man began at such a tender age as a baby, because by Baha'u'llah being in the prison, the whole family was turned upside down. Asiya Khanum and Abdul Baha and everybody were just thrown out of their homes, and their houses were looted, and everything was taken away, and they were staying in the house almost empty. And at nights, Abdul Baha used to accompany his beloved mother Asiya Khanum to go out and look for news of Baha'u'llah in the city, in what is happening to him. And who would be left in the house? The greatest Holy and this child. And greatest Holy was only 6 years old. And the mob was trying to break down the door of the house. And the 2 children were there alone. And when Baha'u'llah came out of the prison and was exiled to Baghdad, Mirza Mehdi was too young to be able to accompany him. So for 6 years, he stayed with the grandparents, away from the beloved father and mother. And it was only when Baha'u'llah, after he returned from his time in the mountains of Kurdistan in Baghdad, that Mirza Mehdi rejoined him. And from that time until he was sacrificed in the prison of Akka, he shared all the sufferings imprisoned and exiled of his beloved. And in the prison of Akka, like the rest, he was all locked up. And his greatest happiness it was to spend every day in the presence of Baha'u'llah in his cell, acting as a secretary when Baha'u'llah would reveal tablets, or to copy them in good handwriting so others could read. And that was his daily life. And when it was finished and had nothing to do, Baha'u'llah would tell him, Mehdi, there is nothing to do. He would go up on the roof. You know, this is the prison, this is the inner part. He would go up to the roof to be alone. And you know, the roofs were flat roofs, and he could go up there and he could just pace the roof back and forth. And back and forth was how, it's not like a kilometer long. No, it's only about 40 meters. From this is the entrance. This really, we are standing almost at the entrance, and at the end is that where that window is. I have measured it, is not more than 40 meters. So he could only walk 40 meters back and forth on the roof, chanting prayers and chanting the poems that Baha'u'llah had revealed, and he had then freedom. He was away from everybody else in the prison. But then there was a problem in this, that there was this opening in the roof. You know, and then it's incredible that for 2 years, from 1868, when they went into the prison, till 1870, Mirza Mehdi used to go up every day to pray, and he would walk back and forth on that same roof, and he always avoided this opening, which was not covered or had a guard or anything. And on this particular day in July, after he finished writing the tablets, and he went on to do, something happened. He forgot. But I don't think so. It's not an accident that he fell from this opening to the floor below. On that particular day, there was a wooden crate sitting here. And as he fell on that crate, the crate smashed, and the broken pieces pierced his body, his lungs and his ribs were shattered. And with the sound of the crash, everybody came running. They found Mirza Mehdi lying in the blood. And the doctor that came could not help. And they took him to another room, and Baha'u'llah came to him and asked him, Mehdi, what is your wish? And Shoghi Effendi has written about it, that his dying wish to the grieving father was that his life should be accepted as a ransom, so that the gates of the prison would open and that the pilgrims could attain the presence of their beloved. And the grieving father accepted the wishes of Mirza Mehdi. 22 hours later, on the 23rd of June, 1870, at the age of 22, Mirza Mehdi passed away. They prepared his body in a tent that was set up in the courtyard, and his remains was taken outside the city of Akka and buried near the shrine of Nabi Saleh, one of the old prophets, until in the 1930s, Shoghi Effendi was able to transfer his remain and that of the beloved mother, which was also in the Akka, to Mount Carmel. We will come to that later. But it is so significant to understand that this was not an accident, because right after that, Baha'u'llah revealed a number of tablets in honor of the Purest Branch. In one of them, he says, I have, O my Lord, offered up that which thou hast given me. That thy servants may be quickened, and all that dwell on earth be united. So friends, Baha'u'llah clearly tells us he sacrificed Mirza Mehdi to wake humanity up and bring us together in unity. The unity of mankind will come about. You know, dear friends, before I go a little bit further, I want to tell you something. You see, these stones is guarded. You know, when we were repairing the prison, this floor was covered in cement. The British had cemented the floor because it was easier to clean, maybe, I don't know. But there were parts of it which were cracked and damaged and so, and when we took it up, we discovered that there was this stone underneath. And these are the original stones. And this being right under that opening is the place where Mirza Mehdi fell, and the Universal Laws of Justice insisted that the government doesn't cover it with these stones, and then put this railing around it so that nobody walks on it. And I want to tell you a little story. I brought in many pilgrims. Every 2 weeks for almost 11 years, I brought pilgrims here. And on one occasion, as we were standing around and listening to what happened here, there was a little child, maybe 5 years old, standing here and holding to this rope with one hand. And in the other hand, she had a little flower, a little purple flower called jacaranda. There's so many many trees of it in Israel and in the gardens in Bethlehem. She had this flower in her hand and she listened. She couldn't take her eyes off, and she kept listening. And then when I finished, she knelt down here, kissed the flower, put it on the stone. And then she got up and buried her face in her mother's skirt. I've seen thousands of pilgrims, but this one, I will never forget. Dear friends, Mirza Mehdi's wish was that his life should be accepted as a ransom, and that the gates of the prison would open and the friends could attain the presence of God. 4 months. Within 4 months, the army needed this place for their soldiers. So they flung the gates of the prison open and allowed Baha'u'llah and his family and the companion to leave the prison and find houses in the city of Akka. And in this way, the door of pilgrimage was open and believers could attain the presence of their beloved. Abdul Baha found a number of houses for Baha'u'llah, but they were all small, and everywhere he went, he could stay only 3 or 4 months until he found this, this house, which I will show you in a minute. But before I do that, I want to also tell you one more thing, and that is in the same tablet that Baha'u'llah revealed, in which he says he sacrificed Mirza Mahdi, he tells us when your body was revealed, was lowered in the earth itself trembled in its longing to meet. There was an earthquake when they put the remains of Mirza Mahdi into the bosom of the Mother Earth. So delighted was the earth to receive Mirza Mahdi in its own bosom. So pure, so special was Mirza Mahdi. He is known to us as the purest branch. And his wish came true. And Abdul Baha found this house, which he rented for Baha'u'llah's use in the city of Akka. After staying in 3 little houses, then he was able to come into this house, which was a little more spacious and better built and nicer, and entered it through this door and went upstairs and occupied this room. You can see the 2 windows of it. Dear friends, this room, this part of the house is known as the house of Uli Khammar, but we know it as we go through this alleyway and come to the front as this house, which is called the House of Abu. This is what we see really first thing when we come from the prison towards this old city of Akka to visit this house in which Baha'u'llah lived for 7 years. I would like to take you into this house and explain everything in a befitting manner, but there is no time for today. I promise you, if I'm still alive, next week we will continue where we left off. I will take you into the rooms, I take you into the house, point out the rooms, and let you see. And then from there we will continue our journey. Thank you all so much.
Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Okay, so we wanted to open it to questions or comments about what we saw today. So if anyone has any questions, you can either type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Ardjomandi, for such a wonderful presentation. Memories of my years serving at the World Center was the Akka walk that I took with you. Ardjomandi Akka walk, which helped us through some of the places where the Blessed Beauty had visited. And the thing that I remember about that Akka walk was you took us to this passage near the bazaar where, things were, garbage were hyped in that area and it smelled really bad. And that gave us a glimpse of what Akka used to smell or used to be like during the time of Baha'u'llah. Thank you very much, Mr. Ardjomandi.
I would like to share something that happened on our pilgrimage when we were right at that very place where Mirza Mahdi fell through the ceiling. We were on pilgrimage and tour, and we walked to there and circled around that spot, and we were being told what was happening. And all of a sudden, I was absolutely flooded with the deepest sorrow I've ever felt in my life. I wept uncontrollably. I didn't do that even at my own dad's funeral or my mother. And even today, it's hard to talk about it. It was just a flooding of sorrow that I felt.
So by thanking Mr. Ardjomandi, I would like to bring one comment regarding Suriname and Mr. Oskui. Years ago, every year we would travel to Suriname, and Mr. Oskui was seeing us in the Baha'i Center, and he would ask us that, how was your trip? I said, the trip was good, but it was a little long, too long. I said, from here, from Austin, we have to go to Miami, and Miami, we have to go to Curacao, and Curacao, we go to Suriname, and the next day we'll get into Suriname. Then he would say that, okay, I'd like to go. He said, I would love to go there to Suriname. But I said, I'm waiting when you have a straight flight from Austin to Paramaribo, Suriname. So let him know when this flight comes, Mr. Ardjomandi. So Mr. Oskui will visit Suriname. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so wonderful. And it was so wonderful seeing everyone join today. I think we all really enjoyed it and had a wonderful experience of traveling to the Holy Land. And I know we just touched on just a little bit of all the history that's there. There is tons and tons of history. You could even go back to the Crusaders and talk about how Akka was an important part many years ago, and how all that history was built up, culminating in Baha'u'llah coming there. It's an amazing place, amazing history. There's so much there that we could talk about and explore. So thank you so much for doing this. So this was part one. So we get to see other parts. So next week, what are you going to share with us? What we're going to explore?
Well, really, this is a summarized presentation, because as I was, and as Nabil helped me put it together when he was here, this presentation is a 9-hour presentation, which is sort of is equivalent to 9 days of pilgrimage. So the next part is going to be the House of Abud and everything that happened in the House of Abud, and the revelation of the Kitab al-Aqdas and all that is associated with that, and also the continuation of the sufferings of Baha'u'llah, because there really is that we are talking about that. And then depending on how fast we move, we are going to then leave the House of Abud and go towards the Rizwan Garden, and then Mazre. So this will be the second day. And the third day will be probably just coming to Mansion of Baha'u'llah, and maybe again part of Akka during the time of the beloved master. But honestly, I don't think that I can, to do justice to it, I cannot summarize too much, because then I miss the point. So I'm just going to do as much as it is possible in the given time. And if I cannot get to to Haifa, okay, well, I leave you to go by yourself.
Wonderful.
But
Well, thank you.
next week will be House of Abud and Masjid and Rizwan Garden and Masjid.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to it. This is wonderful. Any other closing words, Nabil, for your beloved uncle?
Oh, yeah, I will speak to him afterwards, but no, I very much appreciated him doing this. I'd always hoped that our community would have the opportunity to, to hear about, as pilgrims were asked when we have the privilege of going on pilgrimage, to go back to our home communities and to tell these stories. It is quite another thing altogether to have somebody who, has served as a guide, and to tell us directly, with all the love and the, very, very strong ties, to these places. So thank you so much. One question